Namaskar. Hello, friends. In this podcast, we are seeing the basic important concepts that the Gita brings up. Today, we will see what the Gita says about food. There are three categories of food on the basis of the three gunas. It is said that living beings are made by the food that they eat. That is why a sincere spiritual seeker needs to pay attention to what food he is eating. He should eat only satvic food as far as possible and avoid the other types. Then his mind will be in a better position to seek spirit. Sattvic people like the foods that increase life, vigor, strength, good health, happiness, and love. Sattvic food is juicy. It has adequate lubricants, that is, oils or fats. It is nutritious and pleasing to the mind. Foods that are extremely bitter, sour, salty, hot, spicy, and that cause grief and disease are favored by rajasic people. Tamasic people like the foods that are half cooked, tasteless, spoiled, stale, and are already eaten from by others, and they are unholy. Let's see what Gita says about pleasure. There are three kinds of pleasure. Sattvic pleasure is initially bitter, like poison, but sweet in the end, that is, in its effect, and it arises as an outcome of contemplation on the real self. Rajasic pleasure is that which arises from the contact between sense organs and their external contact objects, and it is sweet like nectar in the beginning but bitter in the end. Tamasic pleasure is that which misleads the mind into delusion both in the beginning as well as in the end, and it arises from sleep, laziness, and blundering. The fundamental lesson is that the real pleasure that should be sought by a seeker actually appears like pain in the beginning, but it is in the ultimate interest of the seeker. On the contrary, what appears as pleasure up front often turns out harmful in the end. This is very clearly seen in case of sense pleasures, which are pleasing in the beginning but lead to pain later on. On the contrary, there is pain in pursuing a spiritual path, but that is the one that leads to permanent bliss. Now let us take up a very important concept that is stressed by the Bhagwan. It is Swadharma. There is a very important concept, namely Swadharma, that is preached in the Gita. It is necessary to understand the exact meaning of this term. It is completely different from the concept of dharma or organized religion as it has come to be understood in the later period. Swadharma is a totally individual concept as against dharma, which is called as religion in English, that has become a community or collective concept. Religion has basically evolved as a code of conduct for people living as a community so that they can live peacefully together and also seek redemption of individuals. Every individual is born as a different person with his own baggage of past karma to live through. Even if one may not believe in rebirth and karma theory, one can still understand and accept the scientific reality of genes that make up a person and guide the way he acts and reacts. So, in effect, everyone has his own individual life course to chart that fits into the big picture for the creation. Besides, this magnificent creation with all its mind-boggling variety necessarily must mean different life for different individuals. Swadharma is the way of living that is appropriate to one's own individual aptitude, liking and situation. Following Swadharma is living in the constant awareness that one's life is different in its own way and is a part of the big picture for the functioning of the whole creation. It consists of doing what seems to be appropriate at the given moment in God consciousness, which is nothing but the awareness that there is a big picture much larger than one's limited view of one's own life in the background of one's likes, dislikes, fears and worries. One must act in accordance with his Swadharma, come what may. Whatever happens in future is immaterial in that regard. For that we have to transcend the dualities like happiness or unhappiness. For that we have to also transcend body consciousness, body centeredness. We should stop being judgmental and avoid labeling things as desirable or undesirable, right or wrong. We should simply accept whatever happens after we have performed in accordance with our Swadharma. Then we will never incur sin, irrespective of what we really did by way of Swadharma. For example, an executioner's job is to hang a person duly convicted to death by hanging. So the executioner must do that job as his Swadharma without bothering about the principle that killing is wrong and sinful. He will not incur sin since he is performing in accordance with his Swadharma. Following Swadharma is necessary even if it entails death. Though Shri Krishna says that a Kshatriya, that is a warrior, attains heaven if he gets killed in a battle, we may not need to accept the idea of heaven after death. We can still understand this to mean the honor that he will get after death in the battlefield. Secondly, shunning Swadharma entails castigation by others and loss of reputation, which is like hell for a conscientious person. It helps to look also at the concept of paradharma, which is the exact opposite of Swadharma, and it means another person's individual way of life. Everyone's situation may be different, and hence the way of living for another person may not be appropriate for me. However, we often tend to compare our life with that of someone else and start wanting the so-called good things that the other person seems to be enjoying. But since my situation is different from that of the other person, if I try to do what he is doing, it may amount to a misfit, like putting a square peg in a round hole. Also, that kind of an attempt is more likely to fail because of the misfit, and this fear of failure is very damaging. Gita also says that one must perform one's own Swadharma even if it seems difficult, and that paradharma is strictly avoidable, though it may seem better. For example, if I am not intellectually endowed, I should not covet an intellectual profession. Comparison with another person's life and hankering for something similar without regard to one's own situation can cause grievous consequences for the individual as also for the society, because it disturbs the intended harmony of the big picture. There is a tremendous variety in this creation. Everyone has a different role of his own, and that way the big picture is made perfect. If we start abandoning our role and coveting someone else's, it can lead to chaos. In summary, one should carefully assess one's own capabilities and limitations in the context of one's own situation, and then decide what action is appropriate rather than get driven solely by a desired outcome, and that is Swadharma. If we disregard this and launch towards something that we find attractive because it seems good with someone else, then we will be indulging in paradharma. That's not desirable at all. That is also the reason why equality needs to be understood. Equality cannot mean everybody having everything in equal proportion. That is not possible. Equality in modern times can be understood as equality of opportunity, with the qualification that everyone must first assess his own individual situation and capabilities and aptitude, and then avail of the appropriate opportunity. Equality does not mean, for example, forcibly making someone a doctor who is not capable of becoming a doctor only because his ancestors suffered lack of opportunity centuries ago. In other words, the modern political concept of positive discrimination that takes the form of reservations and special props for the underprivileged runs against the concept of Swadharma. It not only makes life difficult for the person with less capabilities, but it also degrades the functioning of the society as a whole. It is important to follow one's own path of karma in accordance with one's own gunas and varna. By performing your appropriate duties as prescribed for your varna, that is by following Swadharma, you will eventually develop vairagya bhav, that is detachment, which is the gateway to liberation. Even if your own duties appear difficult, you must keep performing them sincerely. Even if someone else's duties appear easier or better than your own, it is important to stick to your own varna duties. If you drop your duties and try to do somebody else's, you will likely remain stuck in an unending loop because of your tendency to be attracted by greener grass on the other side. You will then be like the horse pulling a carriage, attracted by the sheaf of grass tied to the carriage just in front of the horse. The horse never reaches the grass because the grass also keeps moving ahead with the carriage. Likewise, if we hate our own duties and covet someone else's, we will never be satisfied and keep running all the time. I will stop here today and see you the next time. Until then, bye, take care.